Factory? All right, Sunday night. Tomorrow's a big day because you're going to get your first online distance learning assignment. So be looking in Google Classroom. It'll be all there on one slide. You'll also get an email talking all about it. Very important for you to read carefully and all your parents to read it very carefully so everyone can be successful. But we are going to try and finish the Indian in the cupboard tonight. All right, so when we left, he had made the Indian woman, but it looks like they were also talking about sending him back. So once Omri had decided every day that passed was important because it was one day nearer to the last. Patrick was as sad as he was, but he didn't argue against it. It's the only way, really, Patrick said. After that, he didn't talk about it anymore. He just tried to be at Omri's house as much as possible. He couldn't do things with Boone much, of course, even though in a day or two, Boone was sitting up in the longhouse and demanding to talk to his horse, which was brought to the entrance for the purpose, and whining for all sorts of special food and drink. "I can't be expected to get my strength back if y'all won't give me some of the hard stuff," he nagged. He even pretended to have a relapse. Omri pinched a nose dropper full of whiskey from his parents' cupboard, and he squeezed a drop down Boone's throat before the Indian girl, whose name was Bright Stars, a reference to her shining eyes, Omri supposed, had succeeded in conveying the fact that Boone was perfectly all right and his fainting was faked. Still, after he'd had his drink, Boone seemed so much better that Omri and Patrick decided it wouldn't do him any harm. He's used to it after all. And therefore, Boone got a liquor ration 3 times a day. And he did very well on it. "He'll be ready to go back tomorrow," said Omri on the 4th day. And when Boone, having had a leg up from Little Bear, managed to ride his horse around the seed box at a steady walk. "They'll probably look after him better than we can in his own time period." A thought struck him, and he fished out of his pocket the drawing Boone had done. "Boone, is this your hometown?" "Sho is." Omri studied it closely under the magnifying glass. Away up the street, he saw a little sign reading "Doctor." "Is he a good doctor?" "About as good as any out west, I reckon. Fish a bullet out of a man's arm or cut his foot off for a snake bite as neat as can be. I seen him bring a pal of mine back from the dead near enough by putting a hot coal on his belly button. He never operates till a man's dead drunk, and he doesn't charge extra for the liquor neither." Omri and Patrick looked at each other. "You'd feel that you were in good hands with this doctor looking after you?" Patrick asked worriedly. "Sure would. Anyhow, don't need no sawbones now. My wound's healing up fine. So long as I get my whiskey, I'll be good as new." Boone bore not the slightest ill will toward Little Bear for having shot him. "Nah, that's an Injun's natural nature. Poor simple critter. He'd no more help himself than he could keep away from my hoss and my bottle." That night before Omri had decided to send them back, they held the brotherhood ceremony. "I wish we could ask our brothers," said Patrick to Omri at school that day. "Supposing we tell them one day about this. They'll never believe us." "Sending them back," said Omri slowly, "doesn't mean the magic won't work anymore. I'm going to put the key away somewhere so I won't be tempted, but it'll always be there." Patrick looked at him wonderingly. "I never thought of that," he said slowly. "So there'd be nothing to stop us months or even years from now from bringing Boone and Little Bear back again to visit." "I don't know," said Omri. "Maybe their time is different than ours. It would be awful if they were old but he couldn't say dead. Both Boone and Little Bear came from such dangerous times. Omri shivered and changed the subject. "As for our brothers coming, all I want of my brothers is to keep that rat in his cage." The rat had been caught by Omri after a long, patient wait with cheese and a fishing net, and Omri had threatened Gillen with the worst fate imaginable if he let it get away again. The 2 boys went to Yap's after school, and they bought feast food for the ceremony: salted nuts, chips, and chocolate. Omri bought a 1/4 pound of the best meat at the butcher's for tiny hamburgers. A teaspoonful would have been enough, but the butcher wasn't interested in that. They got bread, biscuits, cake, and soda from Omri's mother, and Omri sneaked another dropper full of the hard stuff. without which Boone would certainly not consider it a festive occasion at all. Omri was rather surprised Boone had agreed to be a brother to a stinking redskin, after all, but Boone actually seemed to rather like the idea. "'Tain't just anyone gets to be brother to an Injun chief, you know," he said proudly as he rolled up his sleeve and Bright Stars carefully swabbed his arm with soap and water. But when he saw Little Bear sharpening his knife on a pebble, he turned pale. "Heck, it'll hurt," he muttered, but Patrick told him not to be a coward. "It's only a little nick. It's nothing at all." "Easy for you," retorted Boone. "I ain't so sure this is such a nice idea after all." But he cheered up when he saw the campfire being kindled, and he smelled the meats Bright Stars was cooking on a pointed stick. And when Omri gave him a good swig from the dropper, he swaggered up to Little Bear and offered his arm with a drunken flourish. "Chop away, brother," he said loudly. Little Bear went up through a whole routine first, cleaning himself, offering up loud chanting prayers to the spirits, and performing a marvelous stomping dance around the fire. Then he nicked his own wrist with the point of his knife. The blood welled up, and Boone took one look and he burst into tears. "I don't wanna, I changed my mind," he bawled. But it was too late for that. Little Bear seized his arm, and before Boone knew what was happening, the deed was done. Bright Stars bound their wrists together with a strip of hide torn from the hem of her red dress. Boone looked at it in a bemused way and said, "Gee whiz, we done it. I'm part Injun. Well, I guess I can't say nothing against him in the future." Then the two brothers sat on the ground, and Bright Stars served them the cooked meat and all the rest of the feast. Patrick and Omri offered their congratulations and started in on their own food. They kept the campfire going with tiny bits of broken matchsticks and a bit of coal dust Omri had collected in the outside bunker, which, when sprinkled on the flame, made it spit minute sparks. Looking at it, the three little figures around it, the boys gradually lost their sense of size altogether. "I feel as though I were the same size as them," murmured Patrick. "Me too," said Omri. "I wish we were all the same size, then there'd be no problems." "Don't be funny. No problems with two full-grown Indians and a 6-foot crying cowboy?" "No, I meant if we were small, if we could enter their world, sleep in their longhouse, ride the horses." "I wouldn't mind eating one of those hamburgers," said Omri. Bright Stars was now crouched by the fire, tending it, singing softly. One of the horses whinnied. Boone seemed to have dropped off to sleep. Leaning on Little Bear's shoulder, Little Bear alone was aware of the boys, watching them. He beckoned to Omri with his free hand. When Omri bent to hear him, he said, "Now." "Now? You mean now go back?" "It's good time, all happy. Not wait for morning." Omri looked at Patrick. He nodded slowly. "When you go into the cupboard," Omri said, "you must hold Bright Stars, or she may not go back with you." "Woman go back with Little Bear. Little Bear hold, not let go. And horse. Little Bear only Iroquois with horse." "But Boone must go separately. Don't drag him to your time. Your people would kill him even if you are his new brother." Little Bear looked at Boone, asleep at his side, and at their joined wrists. He took a knife and cut the thong that had bound them together. Patrick gently lifted Boone up. "Don't forget his hat. He'd never forgive us if we let him leave that behind." To be safe, they sat Boone on his horse. Cowboys often ride in their sleep, and he didn't stir as Little Bear led him down the ramp, across the table, and up another ramp that Omri stood against the rim of the cupboard. Then Little Bear went back to the seed box. Carefully, he and Bright Stars put out the fire with the earth. Little Bear took a last look at his longhouse. Then he put Bright Stars onto his horse's back and led him after Boone. They stood all together in the bottom of the cupboard. Nobody spoke. Omri had his hand on the door when Patrick suddenly said, "I'm going to wake Boone up. I don't care. I have to say goodbye to him." Hearing his name, Boone woke himself up so suddenly he nearly fell off his horse. He had to clutch the high pommel on the saddle. "What you want, kid?" he asked Patrick, whose face was close. "You're going home, Boone. I just wanted to say goodbye." Boone stared at him, and then his face slowly crumpled. "I can't stand saying goodbye," and he choked out as tears began to stream. He pulled a huge, grubby handkerchief out from his pocket. "I just refuse to say it, and that's all. I'll only bust out crying if I do." And he blew a trumpet blast on his nose. Omri and Little Bear were staring at each other. Something else was needed, some special farewell. It was Little Bear who thought of it. "Omri, give hand." Omri put his hand forward. The horse braced his legs, but Little Bear held him steady. Little Bear took hold of Omri's little finger, drew his knife, and he pricked the soft part. A drop of blood appeared. Then Little Bear solemnly pressed his own right wrist against the place and held it there. "Brother," he said, looking up at Omri with his fierce black eyes for the last time. Omri withdrew his hand. Little Bear jumped on the back of his horse behind Bright Stars, holding her around the waist so that he, she, and the horse made one unit that could not be separated during whatever kind of unearthly journey they were about to make together through the unknown regions of time, space, and proportion. Little Bear raised his arm in the Indian salute. Omri put his hand on the door. He nearly couldn't do it. He had to set his teeth. Boone and his horse stood patiently, but the Indian's horse started to prance and sidle. It put up its head and gave a long, challenging neigh. "Now!" cried Little Bear. Omri drew in his breath, closed the door, and turned the key. Here's a picture. Can you zoom in on that? I'm getting ready to go. He and Patrick stood frozen with sadness. Oh wait, did I say he turned the key? He and Patrick stood frozen with sadness, the strangeness of it. The magic was working at this moment. Both of them counted silently to 10. Then very slowly, Omri, whose hand had not left the key, turned it back again, and he swung open the plastic door. There they were, the two plastic groups, forms, outlines, shells of the real creatures they had been. Each boy lifted out his own and helplessly examined it. The life-giving details were blurred. Plastic can't show fine beadwork or the perfection of hair and muscle and the folds of hide, the sheen of a horse's coat, or the beauty of a girl's skin. The figures were there, but the people, the personalities, they were gone. Patrick's eyes met Omri's. Both were wet. "We could bring it back just as quick," Patrick said huskily. No, I know. They're home by now." Omri put his group, the Indian, the girl, and the horse, on the shelf nearest his bed, where he could see it easily. He laid the beaded belt, still real, beside it. Patrick slipped the mounted cowboy into his pocket, keeping his hand around it almost as if to keep it warm. Then Omri took the key and left the room. His mother was in the kitchen getting everyone a hot drink before bed. She took one look at Omri's face and her hands became still. "What's happened? What's wrong?" "Nothing, Mom. I want you to keep this key. I lost it. Lucky I found it again, and you told me it was important, but better if you keep it, please." She nearly refused, but then looking at him, she changed her mind, and she took the key from him. "I'll get a chain and I'll wear it," she said, "like I always meant to." "You won't lose it, will you?" She shook her head, and suddenly reached for him and hugged his face against her. He was shaking. He broke away, and he ran back to his room, where Patrick was still standing with his hand in his pocket, gazing at the cupboard. "Come on, I'm going to put all sorts of medicines in it," Omri said loudly. "Bottles of pills and stuff Mom's finished with. We'll pretend it's a doctor's drug cupboard. We can mix lots of them together." His voice petered out. Those were silly games, such as he played before. He didn't feel the slightest interest in them now. "I'd rather go for a walk," said Patrick. "But what shall I do with the cupboard?" asked Omri desperately. "Leave it empty," said Patrick. "In case." He didn't say in case what, but he didn't have to. Just to know you could. That was enough. The end. I hope that y'all loved that book. I certainly did. And you remember the author is Lynn Reed Banks. So if you want to look up books online by that same author, she's a good author. Okay. I look forward to our working together next week. Have a nice evening. Bye.